Like, you keep going. Stop. No, seriously, stop. Today, I have something that has just kind of been pressing on my conscience for the last couple of days. It has just been stuck inside of my brain, and I just have to get it out. I have to vent to somebody, so you're going to be my victim today.
Huh?
So about 2 weeks ago, I finished watching Netflix's latest installment of their Monster series, which was focused on the American murderer and body snatcher, Ed Gein. You know, after sitting with it for a couple of days, I think that I can confidently say that this is the single worst piece of media that I have seen all year. You know, and that's really saying something, because I watched War of the Worlds.
Oh my God.
Now, don't get me wrong, visually this season had all of the makings of a Ryan Murphy production. A semi-interesting story, great performances, and mostly intentional pacing. But the biggest and probably most jarring aspect of this season was just how morally corrupt it all was. There was already a growing amount of skepticism about the motives behind the anthology series following the release of their season about the Menendez brothers, which incorporated some pretty disturbing rumors and falsehoods about Eric and Lyle. Murphy's response to that backlash was even more disturbing, and sort of hinted at the decline that we'll discuss today. But this season of Monster, specifically, to me, confirms what many critics of Ryan Murphy, and many critics of the true crime genre as a whole, have been saying for years. True crime has always kind of danced between that line of morality and voyeurism for years. But the Ed Gein story shows us exactly what happens when that balance collapses, and what is to come if we don't restore it. So in order to gain a proper understanding of just how true crime media is devolving, we're going to examine the lifespan of the genre through Monster's 3 seasons. Season 1, the Dahmer story, will represent the promise of the genre, what can happen when it is executed mostly with care. Season 2, Monsters with an S, will serve as the ideological pivoting point. And Season 3, the Ed Gein story, will demonstrate the complete moral decay of true crime media.
Right here. It's just some pornos. Put them in there so Grandma wouldn't find them.
So contrary to popular belief, true crime media did not begin... Hold on. Much better. Yes. Right, okay. So, contrary to popular belief, true crime media didn't really start with Forensic Files or Netflix originals. The public's infatuation with criminal activity and storytelling stretches way back to the 17th century Ming Dynasty of China, with Zhang Yingyu's Book of Swindles, a collection of stories meant to entertain and warn readers about real stories of scams that they could fall victim to. True crime stories continued to grow in popularity throughout time, especially as printing pamphlets and broadsides became cheaper. The phenomenon of murder pamphlets spread like a wildfire among the artisan and noble classes of England in the 18th and 19th centuries, with many stories aiming to relay moral lessons to their readers while giving them the satisfaction of spectacle. True crime really made its splash in American culture in the 1920s with Edmund Pearson, who wrote several stories that found their way into high-class magazines like The New Yorker and Vanity Fair, which helped turn the genre into something more respectable, kind of like a pastime for the educated. This gave rise to crime magazines like True Detective, which sold millions of copies throughout the 40s and 50s. As you could imagine, true crime books or novels that were heavily inspired or based on true stories began to capitalize on popular demand. When film and television caught on to the growing opportunity within the genre, we began to see an explosion of documentaries, dramas, and entire cable stations dedicated to telling these criminal narratives in the 80s and 90s. Here's where you'll find your Forensic Files or your court TV. Now, with cable becoming something of a dying medium, true crime entertainment has shifted over to streaming services like Netflix or Hulu, or has built audiences in other growing forms of media, like podcasts. Okay, so now that we have a basic understanding of the method...
Yeah, excuse me?
What? Hello, excuse me? What do you want? Yeah, thank you. So, I'm not sure what the normal demographic of your class is, but, for people like me who like to consume more normal and stable media, like, Friends, The Office, The Miraculous Ladybug, could you just explain why people like to consume true crime media in the first place? Did you just call The Miraculous Ladybug normal and stable? Could you just answer the question? Right. So there are plenty of hypothesized reasons why people enjoy watching true crime. Researchers at UNC Chapel Hill suspect that some people are just curious about the minds of criminals, some people are worried about the justice system, and a lot of people just want to play detective in certain cases that they don't know about. But the motivations of those spreading true crime media stretch a little bit further than those narratives. Historically, crime stories were never just about entertainment. They were tools. In the 1600s, English printers sold crime pamphlets that detailed executions, confessions, and sins as a way to reinforce religious values. 19th century newspapers covered murders and robberies obsessively, not just because people were nosy, which they were, but because they acted as a sort of civic bulletin or neighborhood security system. Even those 1950s crime magazines carried lessons for their readers. Don't walk alone at night. Be wary of strangers. Trust law enforcement, or watch out for the flesh-ripping weasels in the ocean. That one isn't actually a crime magazine, I just wanted to put that in there. I say all of this to point out that there is a very diverse set of motivations behind the creation of true crime media, and the popularity that the genre has garnered in the last 20 years makes it a very good medium for important topics such as victim advocacy. We get a glimpse of this potential in Murphy's first installation of the Monster series, The Dahmer Story. And I say glimpse because it is important for us to realize that this conversation about true crime is a relative one. The Dahmer story still commits many of the sins that we see plague the genre. The series is named as his story. The families of the victims weren't consulted about the show, and viewers are almost compelled to sympathize with Dahmer's character, given how long the show lingers on his loneliness, upbringing, and compulsions. But even with all of that, there is a lot that is redeeming about this season. It seems like Murphy and Netflix were definitely more careful than they usually are in their approach to this story. There was a lot of intention in how the series attempts to shift the spotlight off of Dahmer and towards the failures of the systems meant to stop people like him. One extremely popular instance of this takes place in episode 2, which exhibits the infamous moment that Dahmer's neighbor, Glenda Cleveland, calls the police after finding 14-year-old Conorak Synthasophone bleeding and delirious on the stairwell of their apartment. Milwaukee officers John Balserzak and Joseph Gabrus show up, take one glance at the situation, and decide to escort the boy back inside with Dahmer, who claimed that Synthasophone was his intoxicated boyfriend. Neither officer checked anyone's identification. If they had, they would have found that Dahmer was already on probation for a prior offense involving Conorak's older brother. After leaving the scene, the two officers were recorded making homophobic jokes about the incident to the dispatcher. The actual follow-up phone call between Cleveland and Balserzak was played for viewers during the credits of the episode.
This is Officer Balserak. I'm returning your call.
Yeah, there was a squad car, number 68, that was flagged down earlier this evening, about 15 minutes ago.
That was me.
What happened? Was anything done about the situation? You need the names or information or anything from us?
No, not at all.
You don't?
No, it was an intoxicated boyfriend of another boyfriend.
Well, how old was this child?
It wasn't a child, it was an adult.
Are you positive? Because my daughter, seen him in the street, catching earthworms and such.
Yeah, no, he's it's all taken care of, ma'am.
Not so fun fact. Though Balserzak and Gabrus were fired as a direct result of the incident, the two officers were reinstated by a judge less than 3 years later, each with $55,000 in back pay. Balserzak went on to serve as the president of the Milwaukee Police Association for 4 years, before happily retiring in 2017 with full pension, a decision that is still sparking outrage and petitions online. It is deeply disappointing news, but these are the exact type of institutional issues that the Dahmer story looks to bring light to. Later on in the season, Monster spends an episode depicting the life of Tony Hughes. Through the visual depiction of Hughes' embarrassing ambitions, experiences, and character, the show is able to humanize him to viewers. This sounds very strange conceptually because, of course, he was already human. But because of how often true crime productions tend to reduce victims to their names, numbers, or vessels for a plotline, its characterization is extremely necessary. Hughes' presence in the season, among others, also allows Monster to highlight the many ways that Black and queer communities were disparaged by law enforcement. I don't mean at all to insinuate that this season is some sort of perfect depiction of true crime media, but I think one thing we can extract from the Dahmer story is that there is a way to utilize true crime media that doesn't have to rely on spectacle or disingenuity to be successful. Surely then, Ryan Murphy and his writers will take these lessons that they have taught to us and use it to mold modern true crime into a medium that is full of respect and dignity. Right?
You let her walk away. Now it just don't feel the same. Gotta blame it on something. Blame it on something. Gotta blame it on something. Blame it on the rain that was falling, falling.
Good morning. Alright, the year is 2024. You're stuck in your room in the fall, hiding from your family and that god-awful ad that kept playing all election season.
Kamala's for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Move this man!
You look out the window at your north lawn, only to see several students being hauled away by campus police for holding their Palestine flags. You go on your phone, just to try and find some relief, only to find that your $5,000 investment in Hawk2a coin has gone horribly wrong and you no longer have a way to pay for college. What a time to be alive.
Help me! Help!
But don't worry, just as you are at your lowest moment, just as you are gearing up to buy that one-way ticket to Canada, your friends at Netflix are finally here to provide you with the one thing that you needed most. An incestuous, Euphoria-esque retelling of the Menendez brothers story. And if you think I'm being dramatic about this show, then it's obvious to me that you haven't watched it. It's like Murphy took this cautious framework that he had spent so much time explaining and building in the first season and kind of just threw it out the window. Here's a quick refresher if you're not familiar. The series follows Eric and Lyle Menendez, two brothers who were tried and convicted of shooting and killing their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, in 1989. The most publicized moments of the case took place during their first trial, which was televised. Prosecutors, hinging on the fact that the brothers went on a shopping spree days after the murder, claimed that Eric and Lyle killed their parents for financial gain. The defense, however, pointed to the years of emotional, sexual, and physical abuse that the brothers had suffered by Jose's hand, and reasoned that they were acting in self-defense. After a mistrial and a subsequent second trial, the court found Eric and Lyle guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced them to life in prison without the possibility of parole. If you knew anything about Eric and Lyle Menendez before watching this series, which I assume that most people probably did, then you knew that this case was a very sensitive and extremely controversial one. To this day, the motivations that led up to the killing of Jose and Kitty Menendez are widely disputed and disagreed upon. As of this year, the brothers just became eligible for parole after 35 years in prison, which was denied in August. It's clear then that public opinions about the case and media displaying public attitudes towards the brothers could hold some significance to their efforts. But that doesn't seem like something that Murphy or Netflix were particularly concerned about in their depictions of Eric and Lyle. Watching the show, you witness many things that are highlighted about the brothers that don't necessarily contribute to a good faith retelling of their case. The extended emphasis on Lyle wearing a headpiece, the over-the-top portrayal of Eric as the naive and gullible little brother and Lyle as the conniving sociopathic bully, or the life that the show gives to the rumors of a romantic relationship between the brothers all point to the same pattern of behavior, selectively magnifying the most sensational pieces of the record and pushing them to the forefront of the story. It would only make sense that this was sort of intentional. In 2024, Murphy told NBC, quote, "What we're trying to do is show many perspectives. In every episode, you are given a new theory based on people who were either involved or covered the case. The issue here is that many perspectives begins to look a lot less like nuance and a lot more like a grab bag of the most provocative interpretations available. And the issue here with Murphy's interpretations of the story is not necessarily that they are all completely false, but mostly that they are so insensitive. And honestly, that tracks with the larger trend of how we treat true crime. And honestly, that tracks with a larger trend of how we treat true crime now. Somewhere over the last decade, true crime media stopped becoming a medium for understanding violence and motivations and kind of turned into some sort of entertainment currency. You see it in the meteoric rise of crime podcasts as of late. According to Edison Research, the number of Americans listening to true crime podcasts weekly went from 6.7 million in 2019 to 19.1 million in 2024, nearly tripling the audience. Or, if audio media isn't really your style, YouTube offers a wide range of channels solely focused on the analysis of body cam and interrogation footage. The Law and Crime Network currently has 7 million subscribers. EWU Body Cam has 2.7 million, and Midwest Safety has 3.2 million, which means that this channel is only 3 million subscribers away from being with the elites, so if you want to help close that tiny little gap, then feel free. We've gotten to the point where there are tiny subgenres of body cam and interrogation footage that you can pick and choose from. Do you want to watch a former cop give his perspective on a situation? Do you want to watch a psychological breakdown of a suspect's every move? Or maybe you prefer a narrative-based approach that tells you the whole story of the case. The choices here are endless. When you zoom out, Murphy's Menendez season doesn't really exist in a league of its own. It's quite literally a product of the wider true crime landscape. It's basically a prestige budget version of the same storytelling instinct. Highlight the most sensational details, stylize moments of trauma, and emphasize controversy, because that's what drives engagement. With so many narrative threads and angles stacked on top of each other, it becomes hard for viewers to separate what was established in court, what remains unproven, and what exists mainly as rumor or speculation. The show isn't dishonest per se, it's drawing from real moments and documented claims, but the effect is largely about framing. The focus is on the dramatic, the lurid, or the visually and emotionally striking, changes the way that audiences experience the case. Today, podcasts, TikTok recaps, YouTube compilations, and body cam channels encourage viewers to speculate, to fill in gaps, and to judge participants in real time. They present multiple interpretations, sound bites, and clips from different sources, as if each were equally significant, leaving the audience to sort through what's credible and what's dramatized. That makes it immersive, yes, but it also makes it easier for viewers to conflate fact, dramatization, and rumor, which can fundamentally shape how cases like that of the Menendez brothers are understood decades after their trials. And this distortion or disregard of real stories involving real events and real people is something we ought to be very cautious of as true crime is to exist. Because, just as Murphy shows us in his next season, if we don't, there can be foreboding consequences. In November of 1957, while investigating the disappearance of Bernice Worden, police followed a trail of physical evidence to the home of Ed Gein, a reclusive and eccentric resident of Plainfield, Wisconsin. When they entered the house, officials were horrified by what they found. Gein was soon after arrested and charged with the murders of Bernice Worden and Mary Hogan, as well as several grave robberies that had taken place over the last few years. Gein, who had developed a psychotic obsession with his mother and her religious teachings after her passing, was institutionalized for the rest of his life. These were the facts of the case that Netflix, Murphy, and Ian Brennan set out to explore in the third installation of their anthology series. What we got from them, however, was something much more twisted, much more cynical, and honestly, much more sinister. If you make it through more than 3 episodes of this series, which honestly is a feat of strength within itself, you'll start to notice that things get very strange very quickly. Suddenly, we are thrust into this narrative about Gein, where he is heavily inspired by and often hallucinates figures from 1940s Germany, where he can turn into this charming and manipulative neighbor at the drop of a hat, and where he has this very strange Kermit accent.
Same as Mother. Mother's people.
This is really only scratching the surface of all that is completely fabricated in this series. If I sat here and listed everything out to you, it'd be like watching an episode of CinemaSins, but I really encourage you to go look up and see how much creative liberty that Brennan and Netflix took with this story. One particular thing that stood out to me about the Ed Gein story, and stood out to many other critics as well, is just how much time this series spends lying about or making victims of women. Bernice Worden, for example, had no ties to Ed Gein before her disappearance. In the series, however, Worden and Gein embark on this really long and really uncomfortable affair where she constantly feeds into his desires and tries to gift him a bra to wear. Adeline Watkins, a woman who came out years after the fact to detail her short-lived romance with Gein, is transformed into this cunning and soulless accomplice who frequently encourages Gein to commit his crimes and even, for some reason, murders someone of her own. None of these things truly happened. And this is all without mentioning all the prolonged and explicit scenes littered throughout the season of women being brutalized, mistreated, and frankly, made fun of. The show lingers far too long on Gein's methodology and all the gruesome details without showing any regard for the truth or the legacies of the victims. Gein even gets this strange redemption arc at the end of the season where he goes full Hannibal Lecter and starts coaching the police on how to catch Ted Bundy. Then, after showing you all of this fictionalized, melodramatic crap, the producers of the show try to blame you for ever tuning in the first place.
You're the one who can't look away.
But what they fail to mention here in this little scene is that you, the viewer, didn't sign up for this. You signed up for the Ed Gein story, not the fake spin-offs, fantasies, or fetishizations that were fed to you. It's like you watch this show and you really wonder why Murphy or Netflix spent so much time trying to save face and build credibility in the first 2 seasons if they were just going to make everything up all along. And for me, at least, this season marked the creation of a new and very tangible danger within the true crime genre. We now have to ask ourselves, what happens when we allow real names of real people to just become marketing tools? There is an Ed Gein, a Bernice Worden, and Adeline Watkins that do truly exist. But when we let shows like this rewrite their lives for entertainment, those people's experiences and their legacies get trivialized and misrepresented. To be fair, this season experienced less success than the 2 that came before it, but that isn't really saying much. In 2 weeks, the show had over 20 million views and topped Netflix's charts in 65 countries. People are watching, and in an era where everyone has their phone in their hand, but not many people are using it to find the truth, this kind of disregard and this kind of behavior could be really indicative of true crime's complete and moral decay. I want to be clear, I don't say all this to try to place myself on some sort of pedestal. The only reason that I'm able to sit here and talk to you about this show or about body cam footage or about podcasts is because I am literally the target demographic. I consume this stuff more than water. But I think it's important to point out that we all need to pay much more attention to the validity of the things that we consume and how much free reign that we give to producers that are claiming to tell real stories. Only through this, I believe, could we have a modicum of a chance of preserving that was beneficial about true crime media. If you made it this far in the video, then you might as well just subscribe at this point. But no, really, thank you for your time and thank you for watching. I would love to hear anybody's comments, anybody's thoughts on how they feel about this terrible show or how they feel about true crime as a whole. I'm planning to get a lot more active on YouTube in the upcoming months. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna have a lot more stuff for you guys to see, so stay tuned in and have a good day.